This is the third video out of a sequence of 3 videos that are specifically around the idea of mindfulness. And the first 2 were wrapped around the sense of what mindfulness is, how it works, what its benefits are. And this third one is fundamentally about how do we actually do it. It's all well and good to know all the great things it can do. How do we actually do it? And how do we sort of implement it in our daily lives? And the most important concept of all is how do we make it habitual? How do we make it something that we do as a first response to any given emotional stimulus instead of just reacting, right? Because that's what we're trying to kind of get in front of. Instead of reacting emotionally in a given heightened emotional situation or as a result of being triggered, we need a buffer, and mindfulness is the buffer that allows us to reflect before we react. So stick with me and we'll start this journey together and see where it takes us. So when I first came across mindfulness, what feels like a million years ago, the idea of it was, was quite vague and it wasn't really particularly well thought out in Western terms. And I was fairly skeptical at its power and its capacity to be able to make any sort of lasting change, particularly for people that had difficult mental health issues. And the idea of hugging a tree or chanting a mantra seemed like really a bit of mumbo jumbo to me. Basically, given that I was a young lad in the 60s growing up in the East End of London, and my background was really quite a tough one with my parents who were Greek immigrants. So trying to kind of navigate the streets of Hackney in those days, my early kind of curiosity towards psychotherapy and ideas like mindfulness were like deep, dark secrets, not really something I could express with other young people. And I kind of had this sense that if I even dared to say one thing about the idea of mindfulness and the sort of what it could mean and how we do it, I'd probably end up getting beaten up or worse, locked up for being crazy. So as I kind of went through my own particular kind of educational journey, and I began to look at really interesting kind of ideas of what happens for people that develop mental health issues and what there are in terms of tools out there to help people deal with those mental health issues. And one of the first and biggest things I kind of that really blew my world up was DBT, dialectical behavioural therapy. And if you've ever come across it, it's a profoundly powerful tool to help people. Initially, it was generated and created for people that experienced severe BPD, borderline personality disorder, but it's used for every facet of within the mental health kind of tool set. And a central part of dialectical behavioural therapy is mindfulness. That's one of the core kind of elements. And so once I began to really understand that as a particular methodology, it began to really have an impact on me as to how important and fundamental mindfulness could be. And mindfulness, I realised, isn't just about a serene retreat or watching pretty streams cascade down some pretend mountain. It's really about profound but simple ways of being present in the everyday. And the purpose of that is it keeps us grounded and it keeps us focused and it keeps us in the moment instead of us going off and having anxieties about all sorts of things that haven't even happened yet. It keeps us rooted. And when I started to use it as a tool for myself as in person and then in therapy with my clients, the results were completely undeniable. So first and foremost, in my own life, using mindfulness and then it becoming habitual, becoming something that was my go-to that I just did in any given particular situation, and it took years to get to that point. It's just a profound difference in how I feel about myself, how I feel in any given situation, no matter what the stresses are, or no matter what the heightened emotional environment is mindfulness always has kept me central, focused, grounded, and able to reflect rather than react. And then using it within the context of my practice with my clients is a profoundly important idea that makes actually all the difference. I can't overstate how important this idea is of mindfulness, and especially and in particularly the idea of using it for the understanding of your authenticity, which is one of my key strategic kind of routes for healing therapy. So let's have a look at this together and we'll see how it unfolds. And we'll try and work out how we can weave this really powerful idea of mindfulness into the fabric of our everyday lives. And the idea is to turn ordinary moments and everyday things into massive opportunities for growth and self-awareness. And that might sound a little poetic, but the idea is that instead of it being something that you have to take yourself off into some mountain retreat to do, that we can actually practice mindfulness in the small everyday tasks, things that you just do anyway, things that you do every day anyway, rather than having to cut into your life, which I found was one of the biggest issues for people trying to understand and use mindfulness as part of their daily lives. It was having the time, because the idea is people have a sense that in order to practice mindfulness, you've got to take yourself off somewhere. You need proper time and space and all of those kinds of external things. And it's not true. You can practice mindfulness, and actually I believe it's much better and much more powerful to do it when you are wrapping it around everyday tasks. So understanding that mindfulness is about being present in the moment and fully engaging in what we're doing. It's not really about silencing your thoughts, which is what a lot of people do think. And that's where it's difficult, particularly if you have a very busy mind. It's really not about trying to make your mind quiet. It's about seeing the noise that's going on in your head, but almost like being an observer. So rather than be sort of drawn into the conversation, if you like, you allow the noise to happen. You kind of allow it to wash through your body. You develop the idea, if you get the idea of being a colander, like lots of holes, that these thoughts come rushing in, but they also rush back out, and you are standing solid on these rocks, watching all this stuff go on, rather than engaging. So that's what mindfulness will help us do. And a sort of basic example might be, say, you're washing dishes, if you wash dishes. And instead of just washing them with the idea of, right, okay, I need to wash these to get them on the on the kitchen sink and get rid of them, we're gonna do it in a mindful way, right? So we turn the water on. Here are your pile of dishes. We turn the water on. We listen to the water hit the sink. We listen. We use our hearing. We use that sense to listen to the water coming out of the tap and hitting the kitchen sink. And then we'll pick a plate up. And as we pick the plate up, we'll notice how the plate feels in our hands. We will then put the plate perhaps in the water, underneath the running water, if that's how you wash dishes. And notice the warmth of the water on your hands as you're brushing the plate or washing the plate. And you notice the plate get clean. And you are aware and fully engaged with this process of cleaning this plate. And then you're aware of you taking it out of the water and how the water is clearing from the surface of the porcelain or of the plate surface. And then you put it on the drainer, if that's how you do it, and you allow the water to drain. But you are aware and mindful of that entire process, rather than your mind is thinking about anything else in that moment. All you're thinking about in that moment for that 20 seconds, it isn't a huge amount of time. Even if you're meticulous, 20 seconds, 30 seconds tops. During those 30 seconds, you are involved in that process completely. Every component of it. You can smell the washing up liquid and the fragrance of it You can feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You can see how the plate has gone from one state of being dirty to another state of being clean, and conscious of the fact that you are putting this plate on a drying rack perhaps, and then seeing the water drip off it. So let's look at another sort of routine task, like making a cup of tea. And it's something that, or coffee, sorry, if you're a coffee drinker. And it seems such a mundane thing. And most of us, what we have done in the past, what we might do now is we put the kettle on, we'll walk away, we'll go and do something else till the kettle has finished boiling. We'll come back to the kettle, we'll pour the tea. We're not even conscious almost of what is going on. All we're conscious of is the end result, which is what we're going to do when we've got our tea or coffee or our hot drink. So in this instance, what we're going to do is we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to set the kettle up, fill it with water, listen to the water filling the kettle, fill it with water, put it on its electric stand, plug it in or whatever, and we're going to stand there while it boils. We're going to let it boil, we're going to listen to the water bubbling, we're going to watch the steam coming out of the top of the kettle until it's completed its process. Then we're going to take our tea bags, our coffee, our sugar, our milk, and we're going to make this tea, and we are going to watch and be even stirring the tea bag if it's a tea bag with a spoon, watching the colour change on the water, being aware of the steam coming out of your cup, completing the process, maybe adding milk, watching the water change colour, feeling the spoon in your fingers while you're stirring, and the weight of the water as it carries around the actual spoon itself, until you complete. And then when you drink your tea, for just the first sip, just stand there and sip it, taste it, smell it, taste it, take your time in that 10 seconds for that first sip, rather than just guzzle it, sip it and taste it. And feel it as it goes down your throat. Feel it as it kind of fills your mouth and goes down your throat. And stand with it for just a few seconds. That is a mindful act. The more you do these small acts, the more central these acts will become to your everyday, and the more profound you will be able to have mindfulness as part of other processes when things get more difficult and more stressed. So now you've got your cup of tea, we're gonna continue with the idea of using mindfulness for authenticity, to sort of develop authenticity and to ground us. So when we practice mindfulness, we connect with our authentic selves. It's like peeling back layers to reveal our true nature. A client of mine who started practicing mindfulness during their commute found themselves less reactive, more grounded, and surprisingly more themselves. And really, in a commute, what else are you going to do? You've got half an hour, 20 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on your journey, of literally doing nothing. So people, they listen to podcasts, people will scroll through TikToks, people will do all sorts of things. But each one of those things is a distraction. It's not just about being, interested in something else. And yes, it is an opportunity to learn new things to some extent. But if we can use, if you commute twice a day, let's just use a portion of that commute. If your commute is 30 minutes long, then just take 10 minutes, 5 minutes even of that commute before you do anything else. So rather than, scroll through your Facebook feed or go through TikTok or anything else, or any social media interaction at all, just spend some time, a few moments, just being with yourself. So if you're in a bus, spend some time looking out the window. Notice the trees that you see, the urban landscapes, the people that are walking around, milling about, doing their things. But be in that moment. Notice yourself sitting or standing, whatever you're doing. Notice how it feels to be in that space. Notice how you feel in your body. Relax, breathe in, breathe out. Take deep breaths in, take deep breaths out. Be in that moment, stay in that moment. So another way of doing this is to use daily triggers to remind yourself of being mindful. For instance, every time you open a door today, just pause for a second. Take a deep breath and ground yourself in the present. It sounds really, really simplistic, but it is really important because it begins to open the door to being aware and to be awake and alive and in tune of yourself and your environment, rather than being continuously in autopilot, which is what most of us do, right? We do so much of our day through an act of just complete mindlessness. We don't think about it. We don't consider it. We're not really invested in it. We are just doing something almost completely robotically. So these ways and very simple ideas help us to begin to break the idea of being automated and actually becoming more and more deeply aware of ourselves and the process that we're in, how we think and how we feel, and how we experience ourselves in any given moment. And the reason why that is so important is that when this steps up to the next level, as we go through this process and it becomes more habitual, when there are bigger triggers, when there are things that are more triggering and more emotionally loaded, we already have the basis of being mindful to be able to check ourselves and stop ourselves from being drawn into a spiral of reaction, and that we are much more in a position to be able to stay grounded if we put these small things in place. Many of my clients who have practiced mindfulness over a period of months, sometimes even years, and it does take a long time, and it is initially really hard work to maintain this momentum. But so many of my clients come back and say they can't imagine what it was like to be automated anymore. That they are so present now in their body and in every conceivable task that they do, whatever it is, that they are aware and alert and involved and invested in what they are doing in the moment. They are telling me that they experience nothing like the level of anxiety that they used to experience, nothing like the level of depression that they used to walk around with, nothing like the level of being triggered, and that they are saying that they are able to manage the emotions when they get hit by them. They are able to manage their reactions now because they can be reflective, and they've got so used to being reflective that it's so much easier for them to do that than to be reactive, which costs a huge amount in terms of mental health, in terms of the impact on yourself and the stress that it creates, and the impact on the people around you. It does work. So just to kind of take it another step further, those are the simple tasks. Those are the things that you can do every day. And there are obviously a whole range of other things that you can do, much higher up the scale to really, really kind of draw out mindfulness and mindful living. Obviously, meditation is a key one. And that is the next kind of level, I guess, really. That's, using nature, for instance, to take ourselves into a place. Nature is amazing. You can take yourself off to a park, even on a park bench somewhere close to, where you live, or even a city centre, or a quiet garden, and just take a moment to engage with your surroundings, to look at what's going on around you, to look at the light that comes through the trees, the leaves, the patterns in the bark of a tree, or the feel of grass under your feet. And nature's details can anchor us firmly in the present moment if we become aware of it. An easy mindfulness exercise in nature is focusing on using all 5 of our senses to fully experience the environment that we're in. So we can think of things like, and going back to the original thing that I said about tree hugging. All right, perhaps not tree hugging, that might be a bit too obvious. But there's walking up to a tree, for instance, and just touching the bark, just feeling the texture under your fingers, or picking up a leaf that's dropped on the floor and just looking at it and feeling its texture and seeing the lines, noticing how this leaf has been formed and the patterns that are in its embedded in it, and just to become aware of how these things that we completely take for granted, how they feel, how they look, and how you experience them. So as we come to the end of this video, I've tried to really kind of express and encourage you to continue to do mindfulness, but not necessarily in this big kind of landscape, but to bring it right into your everyday tasks. It becomes the first thing that you do in any given situation rather than the last thing that you do. And as I've said before, when you get into a situation which is highly triggering, the first thing that comes out of that is you reach for mindfulness, you reach for reflection and not reaction. And it's the simplicity of using mindfulness in these daily tasks that we do every day that can really help us to pull out the real potential that mindfulness has for generating peace, generating stress-free living, anxious-free living, and removing ourselves from a sea of noise in our minds and our heads. So thanks for sticking with us, and if you've watched the other two videos on mindfulness, then that's great and you'll understand this kind of conclusion. And if you haven't, then please go back and check them out. Please like, subscribe and share. I'd really like your comments as well. Feel free to say what you think, even if you think it's not for you and it doesn't work for you. That's fine. It doesn't work for everybody. But your comments are really, really appreciated, and your feedback's also appreciated. So thanks again. See you later.